sitting here with the legendary Alphonso Johnson. I'm really excited.
Good to be here.
Yes, and you know, we're just gonna jump right into it.
Okay.
Because when I got the opportunity to interview you, I was excited. I was very excited. Partly because I think about 7 years ago at NAMM, we were at NAMM, I saw you in the Modulus booth.
Yes.
And it was our first time meeting. It was my first time actually seeing you in person. And I was really excited. And so, you know, this is before, you know, the Beyonce thing and all this stuff that, you know, happens. And I walk up to Alphonso and I say, hey, you know, I'm Divinity, you know, do you have any advice or any lessons you could give me really quickly on bass? And he said, do you know your major arpeggios? I was like, yeah, I know them pretty good. He was like, well, you have to just every day sit down, go around the circle of fifths and play them. And they're not always going to be easy. When you get, you know, when you get to certain keys, it's going to be really hard. But I mean, immediately what I took from that, and for years I've thought about this conversation that we've had. And I've watched videos of you on YouTube, you know, and I really appreciated that talk from someone such as yourself, to take a moment to talk to a young bass player. And teaching is part of your whole shtick.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So do people do that to you very often, young bass players?
A lot. I mean, I think it's difficult to talk about music in a very direct way for an upcoming bassist, because they're always afraid of asking the wrong thing, you know.
Yes.
But there is no wrong question, you know. When you're curious about music, I think as an educator, once you see that someone's interested in music, you just share as much as you can possibly give them in the simplest manner that you think they'll really get what you're saying without getting real complicated or technical. So.
Absolutely. So you view yourself as an educator. Can you tell us about that journey? Was that something you always wanted to get into? I
think it's around 2005. I decided I wanted to not be waiting for the telephone to ring and enter that stage of my life where I'm waiting and it's not ringing, damn it, you know. So I decided I wanted to make my career happen rather than be responding to things all the time, which is kind of how my career has always been, you know. Phone would ring, I'd meet somebody would introduce me, a chain reaction would start, and I'd be on a new journey. So I decided to go back to school, get my teaching credentials in music education, and along that journey, it's just opened up so many doors for me. I've been doing clinics, I've been teaching down at USC, I've been directing ensemble out at the California Institute of the Arts, and just so many things keep opening. I'm now playing with the San Fernando Valley Symphony, which is, to me, an amazing thing that they would even consider letting me play with them, because they're all so good, you know.
Wait, they're also good, but you have played with some of the most incredible artists in the world and played on some of the most legendary recordings in the world. A lot of bass players, a lot of musicians study a lot of the recordings that you played on, so that's interesting to hear you say that. You know?
It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Yeah, that's interesting, because well, you know, most bass players would love to have had the career that you've had.
Yeah.
You know, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that, because you were talking about, you know, waiting for the phone to ring, and you've played so many different types of gigs and so many different styles. Were there ever any gigs or somebody called you and you was like, I don't know if I can do this gig?
Yeah, I can name a few. Actually, and one I didn't accept. It was a phone call from George Duke, and at the time he was playing with Frank Zappa, and they were out on tour, and Tom Fowler, their bassist, broke his hand. They had a day off. They all decided to go out and play touch football, and Tom broke his hand. So they were thinking who to call, and George said, "Oh, let's call Alphonso. He can read, he can play, can probably play the music." And as soon as I got the call, my first instinct was, "Oh my God, I got to do this. I really want to do this." But then there's this other side of me that becomes very logical, and I thought, okay, the music's going to be difficult. You're going to be playing all these charts, and you're only going to play a couple of gigs, because once Tom Hand's healed, obviously he's back in the game. And I just thought, for that much amount of work, I think, at the risk of embarrassing myself, I'm going to pass.
Wow, that's really funny. What do you think has been the reason why your phone has continued to ring? Was there a point where it was ringing a whole lot, and you were just like, wow, this is happening, and you're just taking these gigs?
I think when the whole there was a period during the 70s, early to mid 70s, where a lot of producers and recording artists started using synthesized bass on their records, and there was an immediate drop of work in the recording studios for me and a lot of other bass players. And that's when I discovered the 5-string bass, because I just wanted to be able to compete, And then what I found out is that I would get called to come in and replace a lot of synth bass parts because they wanted a real feel on it. And I even talked to Nathan East about this, and he said, yeah, exactly, that was exactly what happened. So we kind of turned it around. It opened the doors again, and all of a sudden people started using real musicians and live recording sessions, So it was a way of seeing what was viewed as a negative thing become a good thing.
It seemed like it sort of pushed you to evolve.
That's right. I had to compete and evolve and adapt to the new situation.
Could you talk a little bit about the competition that there is? Musicians are a little bit competitive.
Very competitive.
Yes. And in a way, playing an instrument is viewed as some sort of sport where you're fighting another player. To me, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't like to get into that game because it's annoying a little bit. Because this is music.
Yeah, that's right. It is.
Could you talk a little bit about that and your experiences with that?
Yeah, competition is actually a good thing. It's something that enables us to increase our ability on the instrument, as opposed to, I remember when I recorded Cucumber Slumber with Weather Report, and it became a thing where every gig I kind of had to throw that lick in, and then after a while I thought, that's not really who I am. I don't want to just be that one lick, So I kept learning. I stopped doing it on the gigs, and I just started listening to players that I thought were inspiring me, and not just bass players. I started listening to a lot of Keith Jarrett, a lot of Tony Williams, his use of polyrhythms and how he applied them to the composition. When he starts a solo, he's still in the composition. It might sound like he's just playing a bunch of stuff and then he comes back in, but he's playing through the verse and the bridge and the chorus, And so listening to these other musicians just made me realize, oh wow, I can't do that on bass. Oh, I can't play that. I can hear it, but so it really made me step up my game. And so my biggest competitor is myself, as opposed to, I'm not trying to compete with another bass player. I'm just trying to keep up to my expectations. And I think that as musicians, that's the best thing we can do. We can challenge ourselves and compete within ourselves. And once you are doing 102%, that's got to be enough.
Wow. Okay, I have a couple of other questions. Okay. What's some of the best advice you've ever received from someone? I know that's like so left field.
Wow, the best advice. That's a very difficult question. Let's come back to that one.
Okay.
I have to think about that one.
Have you had an incredible highlight of your career? Something that you look back on and it just makes you so happy with yourself? Like, not just from the perspective of everybody thinks it's so cool, but something that you yourself are really proud of, that you've accomplished.
I was asked to join the group Santana, and after I think 2 years, we got to the point where we were finally comfortable enough with each other that, or I should say, I was comfortable with the band, not the other way around, that I started bringing in compositions. And so I really wanted to bring in something that I knew would touch Carlos in a very personal way. So I started learning how to play this song called Cavatina. It's the theme from the movie The Deer Hunter with Robert De Niro. So I finally kind of got it under my fingers, and then I wrote it out, and I brought the music in, and I could just see it in his eyes when I started playing it for him. I could just see it was like, oh baby, and it was great because not only did he play the melody, he started embellishing the melody, and then he started playing harmony with me, and so that song became like, to me, one of the highlights of our concert. And I'll never forget playing in the stadium in Milan, and when we started playing that song, you saw 30,000 lighters go up, and it blew. I wanted to cry. Yeah, it was I'll never forget that moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's an incredible experience. You started playing music at a very, very early age.
I did.
In elementary school, I believe.
Yeah.
Did you come from a musical family?
No, I was the only musician.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like me, I was the only musician pretty much.
But I shouldn't say no, because what influenced my musicality greatly was listening to all the 45 recordings that my brothers and sisters listened to, all the doo-wop groups, the Shirelles, the Delphonics, just all that music. And I always, at that time, they didn't have bass players. They had some upright players, but the vocalist in the band was the bass player. And so that would always capture my attention. I was always fascinated by how low they could sing, and then you had Melvin from the Temptations, he's amazing. Just all these groups, that was really my musical foundation. And parallel, happening at the same time, was my classical training. So I was kind of in both worlds at the same time, and that kind of helped me keep a broad scope about the music.
Bass was your first instrument?
Yes, right. That's right.
Wow. So I hear that a teacher actually chose you to be the bass player because you were the tallest person in the class.
That's right. That's right. I was the only one tall enough to reach the instrument sitting on a stool.
Yeah. And you stuck with it. What was it about the bass guitar?
There's something about the sound of the instrument vibrating through the body. It's a very spiritual feeling. It's a very sensual feeling, because the low vibrations resonate through this part of your anatomy, and it just it comes up from underneath you and vibrates upward, and that sensation it just grabbed me and never let go, So that's always been the thing that's kept me playing bass. I love, and going back to playing upright bass, now I can really feel that I've got an instrument that just vibrates like it's going nuts. and I'm told it hasn't opened up yet, the instrument. So it's just a joy to play it, as well as my other basses, my electric basses.
Did you put the upright down for a while?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I stopped playing. I would say The last time I seriously played upright was with the Woody Herman Orchestra. I was playing electric and acoustic bass. And just the difficulty of traveling with the bass. Of course, we traveled by bus, so it had its own seat. But once I started taking gigs where we were flying, it became too expensive and just not physically possible to travel with an upright bass. So around 72 is when I last toured playing acoustic bass. And then from there I went to play on with Chuck Mangione and all these other groups. And I would say when I started school in 2005, one of the requirements was you had to play classical music. You had to audition on a classical piece to get into the school. So I kind of had to very quickly remember how to play the acoustic bass again. And it was very humbling, you know, because you can't just jump back into it overnight. You know, you have to build up your chops and your sensibility of distance between intervals on the fingerboard. It's been a good journey for me.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're going back to your classical roots in a sense?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask you about some of your solo work.
Yes.
Because you play with a lot of people, but you also released 3 albums, I believe.
That's correct.
And are you working on new compositions? Are you interested in?
Always, yeah.
So you probably have 100 million compositions.
Well, I have 3 that I'm working on in the studio right now. I'm recording a new solo recording. And I think it's interesting. It really does follow along the lines of when I get to write and record what makes me happy, as opposed to what I think might sell or what somebody else thinks might sell. I always get good result, the best result. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm recording things that really make me happy and things that I get joy out of listening to. You know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You haven't recorded an album in a long time.
No.
So was there a reason why you didn't want to record, or you just found this new, motivation to put out a new album?
I didn't feel like I had anything profound to say. Especially there's so much music out there. It's overwhelming sometimes. And then for me to think, well, where do I fit into that little, niche of all this music? And then I reconnected with someone that I met 20 years ago named Dawn Elder. And we talked about my career, and I asked her to manage me, and she agreed to. And she said the first thing we got to do is go in and record some of your new stuff. And that's been the biggest incentive for me to go in and record.
I think people want to hear a new record from you.
I hope so.
So I'm excited about that.
And that question you asked me earlier, I remember sitting at a bar before going to soundcheck in a gig with Wayne Shorter. And Wayne is just a very profound artist, not just a musician, but he really thinks like an artist, and I love that about him. But I remember him saying, music is just a small part of life. And I've always thought about that. I always think about that, how it is the thing that consumes us probably 90% of the day. Sometimes you have to step back and remember it's not everything. There's so much more to life, to what we do when we wake up in the morning and bring joy to somebody or be of service to someone. And I think that's very true. It's a very small part of the big picture.
That's a great perspective to have, because you're right. We are consumed with it as musicians all the time. All we think about is music, and it's the biggest thing in the world, and it's really not.
No.
So tiny. Man, that's awesome. Let me see. I had a couple of other questions I wanted to ask you. Let me look at my phone, because we started talking about so many things, and I didn't get. Oh, your first gig. Because I didn't see that.
Professional?
Your first gig is when you actually stepped on stage with your bass guitar, with your band, or with a band in some little bitty club somewhere. Like, what was that like, and was that the moment that you decided this is definitely what I'm gonna do?
My first gig was playing at a house party in South Philadelphia. I didn't really know how to play, but there was this guy who used to throw these parties in his apartment. And he asked me and a guitar player to come up and play. So we learned 3 songs. Oh, that was all we knew, 3 songs. And I sat home every day and put the needle back and put the needle back and finally learned the bass part. And that's what we played. And we would play those 3 songs for the whole party. We'd take a break, come back, play our 3 songs.
That's awesome.
People would be getting drunk, you know. And then after a while, that was a training ground for me to learn how to play bass. Was get the record, put the needle on the record, listen to a measure, find the notes. Listen to the next measure, find the notes. Put those 2 together. Listen to the next. And that was always the process.
Wow.
But that was my first gig.
What was your first professional gig?
My first professional gig was June 18th, 1968. I graduated from high school. I stepped off the stage with my diploma and my cap and gown, kissed my mom, and got in the car with 7 other guys and drove to Atlantic City, New Jersey. And that was my first professional job.
That's awesome. What did your parents think? Were they supportive, or were they scared for you?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'll call my mom every Sunday, so I'll ask her tomorrow what she thought about that. My parents separated when I was very young, but I know my dad was always very proud of my being a musician, you know, because he saw that I could support myself, and that was very important to him. But my mom, I think she was just, as long as I was happy, she was happy. You know, she's a very cool person, my mom. Very sharp at 88 years old. And her sister at 98 is even sharper.
Wow.
Sharp as a tack. Oh my God, yeah.
98. That's a blessing.
Yeah.
Man, think about how much you've seen the world change.
Oh yeah.
I mean, how much have you seen the music industry change from the beginnings of your professional career to now?
I've seen a lot. I mean, not just in the music industry. I remember, as a matter of fact, I just got a DVD from a guy today of me playing in East Berlin before the wall came down. That's how much things have changed.
Wow, yeah. What sort of impact does that have on you? I mean,
it's incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. After that afternoon before the concert, we stood at I think it's called the Reichstag. It's where Hitler used to give all of his famous speeches.
Yeah.
And we were on the East Berlin side with this couple who lived in East Germany, East Berlin, and the woman would not look across to the west side because she says, I know I'll never be able to go there. And a month or 2 later, the wall came down, and she was the first person I thought about.
Wow.
And I can't imagine her sense of feeling to know, what? I can go over there? You know, that's mind-blowing. That's what I think Wayne Shorter was talking about music being such a small part of life.
Wow. Okay, let me see. I know I have a couple more. This is exciting. Oh, what do you do when you're not playing bass?
I'm a husband. I'm a father. I have 2 dogs that wake me up at 5 o'clock every morning to go walking. I love to organize my day. I'm a teacher, so I have to organize my lessons every week for my students, which sometimes requires me to do a little bit of research and some homework. And I just hang out.
Just hang out.
Yeah. Become part of whatever's going on. Go with the flow.
Yeah. Very cool. Is there something that you haven't done that you would like to do? Musically or otherwise? I mean, you've traveled the world, you've seen...
I think I'm doing it now. I'm going back to school, finally, getting my degree, my teaching credentials in music education. And I'm playing the music that I love to play. And I'm in a very musical family, the Warwick family, which is a great place to be. I'm pretty happy.
That's awesome. And he's a fellow Aquarian like me.
Yes.
Happy early birthday.
When is your birthday?
The 5th of February.
Oh, congratulations. Yeah. Yes. Well, I'll be thinking about you.
Yeah, I'll be thinking about you on the 2nd. And I'm going to try to come to your gig, the 23rd, I think it's the 23rd.
Of February? Yes. Yeah, you'll get an invitation.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you.
It's a wrap.